Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. You got the job. But what happens after that congratulatory post is where the real fun begins in your career as a software developer. Too many times we're online scrolling and we see the person finally got the job, or I'll post about somebody from Parsity or a person I know says, look, somebody got the job. Isn't that great? And we all cheer. And then we just forget about them. But that period after you get hired is obviously the longest stretch of your career as a software developer. It's also the most difficult and stressful. I've just gone through this experience 2 times in the year so far. I hope I don't go through it again. Got laid off, got hired, quit that job because it wasn't a great fit, and just started my first week of work at a new small startup. So this is fresh in my mind. I've also congratulated no less than 5 people this month on getting hired, which is amazing. The market does appear to be correcting itself and just getting back to a more normal state. Some of those people have been Parsity students. One that stands out is a person I met online who is completely self-taught, who now is in his first software developer position. Now, the people that have reached out to me and talked to me about what they're going through now, they're experiencing a lot of what I experienced. Stress. There's a reason why software developers are paid so much. Deadlines, complex code they're writing, trying to figure out how to get it all merged correctly so it doesn't interfere with other code. Think about the issue that happened with CrowdStrike recently that basically took down like 25% of the world, caused massive outages. At the end of the day, there was some dude or some woman writing code, didn't write code that actually did what they thought it would do, and that ended up taking down a lot of the world. It had very real consequences. So the code you write either for a business's website or for an application that people download to their phones, there's real consequences associated with that, right? If you break somebody's website for their business and they can't collect money or they have some sort of promotion going on, that costs money out of their pocket. So the idea that software development is like a chill job or that it's easy in some way to do is completely untrue, especially the more money you get paid. And honestly, the more money you get paid, I've noticed, and what I've heard from other people too that are probably a little neurotic like me, the more pressure you feel. Because if you went from making $50,000 and now you're making $100,000 and you're new and you're thinking, why are these people paying me this much? What if I mess up? Or am I going to get found out? And you start spinning in your head. This adds to the stress. You're already trying to figure out all these things. So what I want to go over is kind of what my way of going through this is. I was a manager, associate director, and now I'm back to senior full stack engineer. That's another story in itself. I just wanted to get back to writing code, but now I'm beginning to realize like, oh yeah, that's this feeling I'm getting again of that first day of work, that first week. You know, am I doing well? Am I not? Oh my God, did they make a mistake? Am I going to get fired? So I want to address these things and tell you what I'm doing to make sure that I'm set up for success in the best way that I can, and how you can steal these same things so you too can be set up for success, because getting the job is hard. Doing the job is much, much harder. And I really hate it when I hear people just quitting before they reach the promised land. Let's say the worst case scenario. Here's one of the worst case scenarios I've heard. I've been applying for a year and I filled out 2,500 applications and no one has hired me. I'm giving up. I'm going back to whatever I was doing. I'm like, okay, that's fair. I understand. That's a year, right? That's a really long time to maintain your focus and dedication and just kind of keep optimistic that you're going to get hired. It can feel like you're just not, and you quit. You go back to your regular life. Okay, cool. What if it took you 2 years? What if it took you 2 full years to get to that job? Would it be worth it at that point? I think you have to do some cost benefit analysis. If you learn the skill of coding, of building software, of working on a team, of doing all the things you need to be employable as a software developer, you have to think eventually somebody will employ me and pay me to write code, right? Like that seems inevitable if you actually are good at what you do and you're able to prove that online and get interviews and then prove it in an interview. So those things are not impossible, right? Those things are very doable to do. Let's say it takes you 2 years to do that. Let's say you're 35, for example. You're not like super young. You're not, fresh out of college. You're 35. At 37, if you start the job then, okay, now how long are you going to be in that job? 10 years? 20 years? More like 25 years. If Social Security continues going the way it's going, there's a chance you'll be working for another quarter century. Basically, your whole life from 12 up to your current age is how long you'll be continuing to work. So was that worth it? Is the amount of money that you'll likely get from making that switch worth it? Or is it worth just sticking to your old job, old life, doing whatever? I think more people should think this long-term benefit of your career, because learning to code and Parsity, what I'm beginning to realize and embrace more, it's not just learning how to build software. It's like career change is what we ultimately are selling. Learning to build software is difficult. The career change aspect which is why we invest so much into our career services, is the really hard part. This is a career change, not just learning to code, which is kind of trivial to me at this point. Like, yeah, learning to code is tough. You learn to code, but what about getting paid to code? Anyway, let's pretend you know how to code. You're ready to get paid now. Now you have this really long career ahead of you, which I hope would excite you if you are trying to get into software development. I mean, that's the whole reason that I learned to code and wanted to do it, because I thought this is really fun. I like doing this. And of course, the money's not terrible either. So how do you succeed on day one of the rest of your life? When you walk into any typical software development company, I've done this about 7-8 times over the last 10 years. What you're going to do is get access to all the different systems. And what you want to do is, one, get something running on the screen. You want to get your project running. There are probably multiple projects. They're probably bigger than anything you've ever seen before in your life, because that little app you built in React or with HTML and CSS and JavaScript is nowhere near the complexity of a project that maybe hundreds of people have been working on for years or decades, potentially. I mean, that can be the case. Even if you're at a startup like I am, the code base is enormous compared to what you've written on your own. So your number one task is just get it running. You just want to see something on the screen. If it's a UI app, if it's not, if it's something that you need to, if it's a backend service, you want to get it running so you can hit that endpoint and then see what kind of methods are exposed or whatever. You want to get something you can interact with, and you want to understand it, and that's completely fine. You just need to get it running, just so you can barely understand it. Then identify a small piece where you can dig into further. And by a small piece, I mean, maybe if it's a UI app, like let's say it's an e-commerce store, maybe the one piece you really want to check out is like how the cart works. You're like, okay, well, cart is a really important piece of an e-commerce app. So maybe I'll click on a button and see like, how does this cart work at a really high level? You just want to find that entry point, because if you just look at the whole thing, you're going to get way too confused. And so I like to look at one small piece, or ask somebody like, hey, what's like a, piece of this that would not be intuitive to figure out? And maybe you can even walk me through it. That's a really good opportunity for you to start working with your coworkers. And when I mean on day one, I mean like day one. Part of this is tactical and practical, and part of this is like Jedi mind trick stuff. Because when you come in, no one knows you. They might say, oh, there's the new guy or girl we hired. They don't know anything about your past. You just come on strong. You just kind of fake it till you are it, or fake it till you make it, whatever one you prefer. I prefer fake it till you are it, because eventually, if you pretend to be something long enough, you can and will become that thing. I've certainly done that throughout my life. Anyway, you ask a coworker, say, hey, I'd like you to walk me through this when you have a chance. Is there a good time we can meet up? Person immediately thinks, wow, that's really proactive. It's day one. They're already trying to like figure out like something like this. You pair with them. You say, hey, can you share your screen maybe and show me, like kind of walk me through what you're doing and how this thing works and how you're getting it set up and perfect. Now you're seeing how this person really does it, because most times what you'll find is there's no documentation and there's no real mentorship on the job. that is a really weird rumor slash myth that I see online all the time. People's like, I want a company that's going to give me a mentor and help me succeed. And I get all these different people supporting me. What really happens ultimately is you're kind of thrown in the fire. And this is why a lot of people fail, because there's just no clear set expectations. They bumble around, they're remote, so they feel even less encouraged to reach out online because they're not used to speaking online or knowing how to show up and be present online. I should do a show about that, shouldn't I? And so what they do is they retreat into their code hole, they freak out, they go and spin it in circles. And then sometimes, unfortunately, I've seen those same people get fired. Really not a fun story to have happen. Really not a great experience. And it takes a while to bounce back from that mentally, I think. So don't fall into that camp. I know maybe if you're listening to this show that maybe you're still looking for that first job, or maybe you're just learning how to code. But this, my friend, is where the really important stuff happens. And I think you should be thinking about this well in advance. So how do you get prepared for this kind of thing? So this idea of working with a massive project, open source would be the thing that I would suggest to you to do. And when I say open source, I don't mean like go contribute to open source. I think that's a terrible idea, if I'm being completely honest with you, because open source software is usually wildly complex. It usually has a lot more rules than even most companies have for how you can contribute. There's way too many people trying to contribute to it, so it's really hard to find issues beyond fixing a typo that are useful. So the way to use open source in order to get some of this initial experience of working and navigating a large code base is to literally find like a big open source project, or just maybe go to Kyle Simpson's account on GitHub. It's Getify, Getify. And then what you want to do is you want to clone and run the project. That's it. If you can clone it down, run the project and understand how it works, and maybe even make a short video where you're explaining that to yourself, that will be really, really helpful for you as a software developer, because now you're getting to experience what it's like working with somebody else's code. If it's a really large code base, trying to figure out like, well, how does this work? How do you even run this thing? Just running it alone could take you a day to a week. So really good little project to do that doesn't involve writing any code at all, but will help you once you eventually do get hired. Next thing you want to do, you want to take on a feature or a bug and ship something into production as fast as possible. Why? You want to understand the SDLC. Software developers love acronyms, and software development is full of them. SDLC is the software developer lifecycle, or the software development lifecycle rather, where code goes from inception to development to deployment to testing to capturing bugs, and then back into development again. It's this never-ending cycle of how we create and then maintain software, because software has a life cycle, and the life cycle of software never really ends, because once you ship code, people will update it, things will happen, users will use it in ways you never intended, and it will continue to need upkeep and maintenance, kind of like a lawn or a garden or something like that. It's like code is kind of like a living thing, and you're going to have to update it fairly often throughout its cycle. It's never that you just write code once and it's just gone. So you want to understand this process, because you want to understand how does this team do this process? Do they write code and does it go through a peer review? Does another developer review it? Does it go through some sort of quality assurance check? Is that check automated? What kind of cloud service provider do they use? Are they using Vercel or AWS or whatever? Understanding all these things can take a long time, but if you fix like a typo on the site, which is a great first bug to fix, by the way, for a junior developer, it's something I used to tell people to do, like, oh, change the color of this button, or hey, fix this typo, and then let's just get it shipped out to production, because that whole process is going to teach you a ton about how things really work. And if you want to understand this process on your own, well, first I'd say, go to a boot camp like Parsity, where you really understand this whole process, where you're using Git and GitHub and you're getting code from your machine out to the web using a cloud service provider. If you're not in a boot camp like Parsity, or you're doing your own thing, really important you're understanding this as well, because it will save you a ton of headache when you get on the job. If you're writing code on your computer, that's cool. Writing code that the whole world can access is a lot cooler. So what you do is you get an account on AWS or Vercel if you're using Next.js, or render.com, or pick one, Netlify, DigitalOcean, pick a place, have it hooked up to your GitHub account, and then make it so when you push code to a certain branch in GitHub, it triggers a deployment to that cloud service provider. And if you want to get really fancy, buy a domain and have it hosted there. So that way you have a real life URL. That's a really cool project to do. It's actually not difficult nowadays to set that kind of thing up. If you use AWS though, it can be more difficult. And fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know, most companies use Amazon Web Services. AWS is the dominant cloud service provider out there. So if you want to upskill in that area, I would just use AWS. It'll teach you a lot. It's something really cool you can put on your resume and talk about when people, ask you to interview, what's something really difficult you did? Well, I had to deploy a project on AWS. And immediately your interviewer is probably like, oof, how was that? And you can tell them all about all the issues you ran into trying to figure it out. So great project to do. And it's going to help you out with not only your story when you're on the interview circuit, but it's going to help you out once you get to the job, most likely, right? One of the last things you need to do is make a 30-day plan, because your manager may not. They might just say, hey, any questions for me? See ya. You'd be shocked how little training there is for managers. I know it because I talk to a lot of you out there and I hear what your managers do or don't say or do say. Jeez, I've heard some horror stories out there. And it sucks when your manager calls you in after 6 months, they haven't talked to you at all, and say, hey, you know what? You're not really meeting expectations. We're going to have to let you go. And you're like, oh no, what? I was shipping all these bugs and, fixing typos here and there. And they said, well, we just expected more. You just didn't cut it, Sorry, no hard feelings, but see you later, see you never. And you're wondering, what the hell was this about? Now, your manager is not some vindictive, terrible person, or maybe they are, I don't know. But what likely happened is they're busy. They have other reports. They might not know much about managing people because they might have been a former engineer themselves. So they don't really know how to provide feedback other than when they're told they have to provide feedback. And they might be silently not so happy with your work. But if you don't actually engage with them, if they're a bad manager, I should say, a good manager would never do any of this stuff. But bad, mediocre, on the other side of mediocre managers totally do this kind of stuff. I've seen it happen too often to just think it's an anomaly. So you should be prepared for that situation. And how do you prepare for that? By saying, here, dude or lady or whoever, circle, here's my 30-day plan. In 30 days, I want to be able to participate in on-call. On-call is the duty of a person, an engineer on the team, to be up and fix critical issues if they arise, no matter what time of day or night it is. This is a very common position, common process that most teams will adopt, and they usually have a person doing it maybe one day or maybe for a full week, and they'll rotate. And you're going to say, I want to follow that person and shadow them in the first 30 days, so that way I can understand how to do it, and then I want to be on a rotation for on-call. Next, I want to shadow one of the engineers and understand some of the more complex parts of the application so I can document them and be immediately useful within the code base. Next thing I want to do, I want to ship a small feature or bug and fix it, and I want to get that out into production. And lastly, I want to understand the software development lifecycle. This should all take place within the first 30 days and includes setting up your laptop and understanding the coding standards and things like that. And you show that to them and say, here's my plan. Does this seem appropriate? Is there anything you think I should add to this plan? And they're going to say, whoa, nuts. Now, this is, again, part tactical, part Jedi mind trick, and part just covering your ass. You know what I mean? Because now you're saying, cool, you've seen this. I've shown it to you in an email, whatever, and they've now verified, yeah, this looks great. I'm really happy you've written this up. Excellent, my friend. Now you come back in a month and you say, here, I've checked off everything on this list. How are we doing? Let's do one for the 60 days and the 90 days and the 6 months. Very, very typical. And it's also, unfortunately, too typical that they'll just say, oh, yeah, how's things going? Oh, great. Any questions for me this week? No? Okay, we'll see you in a couple weeks. And you can do that little dance for months and end up not really moving very far. If you're aggressive and start off strong like that, you're going to make them look at you like, okay, this person's proactive. They're a person that I think is going to do well on this team. Even if you're not shipping the best code, they're like, okay, cool. This person is really they seem like they're very, very disciplined and organized, right? So that's going to help you out in their mind. That first impression is going to give you that halo effect where they're going to be looking at you now under the light of, well, wow, this person really came in strong and doing all this awesome stuff. So when they see you do more things, they're going to think, I bet he's writing really good code too. Well, I bet they're doing really good peer reviews. This kind of halo effect is a common mental exercise that humans do. We tend to attribute other good values to people when we see a good value in them at first. So we see them do something nice, like maybe they're rich or good looking, or maybe we saw them help a baby up, and maybe they're a serial killer in real life, but we saw them do that thing. So we immediately attribute all sorts of other nice attributes to them and say, oh, look at that person. They're so good looking and rich. I bet they're really nice. Or, oh, wow, they picked up that baby on the street. I bet they're like a saint. What a wonderful thing to do. They gave a homeless guy a wooden nickel and you thought it was a real nickel. And you're saying, wow, what an awesome person. I bet they're just a delightful person. You don't know it all. So you can use this to your advantage as a software developer by doing these things, coming on strong, and then getting that halo effect to work in your favor. Now, remember this, most people fail due to unclear expectations, whether in their own personal life or at work as a software developer. And I see too many people failing to even get to the software developer stage of their coding career because they learn to code, they get frustrated, they give up 6 months, and people say, I've done this for 6 months and I'm just done. There's no one's going to hire me. I actually had a person write that to me. I've had multiple people write that to me. And part of me wants to say, yeah, 6 months for a life-changing event and a life-changing amount of money is a really trivial amount of time. Parsity takes 6 months just for the coding portion of it. We spend another 3 to 6 months on your career portion. So does it take longer to get hired than it used to during the pandemic when people used to get hired even before boot camps were ended? Yeah, for sure. Is it worth it? Yeah, for sure. I've rarely met a person. I think I've met maybe 2 people over the 10 years that have regretted going into software after graduating from a boot camp and getting hired. I've just met more people that are like, yeah, this was a life-changing thing. I mean, it's literally a change in your life. Your job is what you do for most of your day, and it's going to affect your money, which affects all sorts of other aspects of your life. So getting this right is really important, and getting this wrong is what too many people do, or just leave it to chance. And some people get lucky and they kind of figure it out. Like I've made all the mistakes you can imagine. And that's why I speak about it on this show so much, because I didn't do this stuff. It took me 3 jobs in to understand, here's how the game is played. I learned from smarter people. I just asked them, hey, what are you doing? I took notes. I was in person in the office and I got to see what good developers were doing, which was really helpful. So I really hope that this show is that way of giving back, and also, of course, promoting my business, which is Parsity. Go check it out. Anyway, I always hope this stuff is helpful. If you have just started your first job and you're like on your first week, month, 6 months, I would love to hear from you and hear what are the things you're struggling with and other things you'd like me to speak about on this episode. Anyway, have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening. As always, I'll see you around. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.